Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Dear Umair. I'm Jamin Shively, and today we're going to be reading today's article, today being Monday, September 13th. The article is entitled, "The Planet is Not Our Slave." And just as last time, I encourage everyone to jump in with any comments or questions or anything you want to say at any point, even while we're reading the article. And when I'm reading, I put the background as red. So I'll just trust you all to jump in anytime. Don't worry about raising your hand or anything. There's half a dozen of us here, so it's a perfect number to just jump in whenever you feel like it. Okay, beginning with the reading. The planet is not our slave. Subtext: if we don't change our broken relationship with nature, climate change is going to destroy us. Pandemic, mega fire, mega flood. It's becoming clearer by the day, sometimes by the hour, that we live in an age of apocalypse. 20 million are dead of COVID and counting. Climate change, global warming, is already making parts of places like California uninhabitable. Apocalypse, as religious scholars will tell you, means an unveiling. Don't worry, this isn't going to be a religious post, but it is going to be one about what's being unveiled, revealed to us by this age of apocalypse. That's something elemental, profound, and worrying about us. On the deepest level, who are we? Who are we here to be? What is the point of us, the human species? Something has gone badly wrong after all. But what? As I think about it, what this age of apocalypse is beginning to reveal is that our relationships are broken, the deepest kinds of ones. Our relationships with nature and with each other. The easiest broken relationship to see is the one we have with nature. We are the worst thing to happen to planet Earth since the meteor which wiped out the dinosaurs. Our effect is exactly the same. Mass extinction, huge climatic shifts, only slower. Why is our relationship with nature so broken? How would you describe our relationship with nature? It's a master-slave relationship. We exploit, dominate, abuse, and ruin. Meanwhile, nature has no rights, self-determination, or inherent worth. The problem, though, is that nature wasn't meant to be our slave, and reducing it to a position of slavery is ushering in an age of climate apocalypse. We don't really have one. Nature is something to exploit.
Yeah. When I read
Yeah.
that sentence earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
I read the article.
Yeah.
I think that's a typo. I don't know what that sentence is doing in there. That
Yeah,
one.
no. I think it is a typo. I think what he's saying is we don't have a relationship with nature, is what he means, is what I read into it. That's why I paused there.
Yeah, it's
Right.
not sequitur somehow. But anyway.
Yeah, no. Good point. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for jumping in. Keep jumping in, everybody, whenever you feel like it. Follow Jonathan's example. Nature is something to exploit, abuse, and discard. It's a resource for capitalism to plunder and despoil, and for us as individuals to consume. Think for a moment about how profoundly wrong that is. I have a dog, like you might have a dog. My dog is a character. He has a personality all his own. His emotional life is easily as complex as mine, if not more. He is a far better person than I am. more caring, intimate, less capable of deception and folly. He is innocent in ways I am not. Nature is like that. It is, above all, innocent. It has done nothing to be annihilated by us. And yet we justify it with the way that we see nature. Have you ever watched the show Naked and Afraid? In it, people are sent into the jungle or the desert, and they try to survive. Yet what's remarkable about the show is that they never ever comment on how beautiful the night sky is, or how present life seems to be, or how awareness seems to permeate all things. No, the show is an exercise in paranoia and violence, not peace and gratitude. I don't mean that in what you might call derisively, as David Brooks would, a hippy-dippy way. It's true that nature can be brutal, but nothing in nature is as brutal as us. By and large, nature takes what it needs to survive. A tree grows its roots into the soil and takes what water it needs to reach towards the sky. The animals drink from the lake, but they don't try to take the whole ocean. Only we do that. We're gaining some kind of small awareness these days of how wrong colonization and slavery were. Whose land was it? It wasn't ours. But the native peoples, most of them, would have told you and would still tell you, it wasn't theirs either. It was for life, all life. My dog, a city dog, finds himself in the suburbs, and he's baffled by human property rights. Totally baffled. Dad, why is that the neighbor's yard? Who made this arbitrary line? How come that tree belongs to us and this one to them? Who made these crazy rules? The answer is we did. We carved the world up into property and then kept on carving it. Empires became nations. Slaves became peasants. But who does the world really belong to? Nobody and everybody is the answer. The world belongs to all of us, and all of us really means all of us, not just human beings. And so when I say our relationship with nature is broken, I mean it in not just intellectual ways, but pragmatic ones too. Why can't we save the world's ecologies? Take the example of the Amazon. It's a net carbon emitter now, having been clear-cut into oblivion. That happened because it was privatized and sold off. Capitalism and human property rights again. We have to really learn to coexist. We can't do that under the black spell of capitalism and property rights. It begins with the assumption that everything belongs to us, the human species. And the only question is, which human gets it? Bezos, Zuck, you, me? Capitalism's assumption is that everything in the world is a commodity which belongs to human beings for them to consume. But we can't survive as a civilization that way. We have already consumed too much, several planets worth. At this rate of consumption, global warming will proceed even more apocalyptically. This mega fire and mega flood, California and Canada on fire. This is 1 degree of warming, barely that. At 2 degrees, entire regions of the planet become uninhabitable. At 3, the water turns to poison and the soil to dust. You don't want to know what happens at 4, which is that it automatically hits 5 thanks to self-reinforcing feedback. It's enough to know that most life as we know it can't survive. And so our civilization's systems collapse as they've already begun collapsing. Air, water, food, medicine, all these things are becoming harder and harder to get. Tried to buy furniture or electronics recently? Not easy, is it? But this is just the beginning. Collapse of an incredible kind, history's worst.
Can I stop you there?
Please, 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 yeah.
You know about the concept of reversion to the mean?
Reversion to the mean as in the average, mathematical average?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's this concept all through social planning and climate stuff and some other fields of science where systems have a tendency to revert to the mean, except in the rarest of occasions. And then the other concept is Bayes' theorem, or Bayesian logic, which is that all observations exist inside a framework of prior observations, and that the best way to evaluate things is looking at what were the likely outcomes, in a prior time. So I don't think it's appropriate to get too worried about the interruption of the supply chain that's occurred related to COVID or caused by COVID, because there's a lot of financial incentive for these supply chains to snap back. And if they don't snap back in the way that they were before, in other words, if the piece of metal that I was getting at Home Depot that used to come from Taiwan can't come from Taiwan again for too long, somebody else will figure out a way to make that piece of metal and get it to Home Depot. So he's saying that it's hard to get furniture and car parts or something like that, and he's right, but it would be very unusual if that didn't correct itself, given the amount of economic value there is in somebody correcting that supply chain. The entire economy of the world, in other words, the trillions of dollars that are floating around, this is what we do. We build things and we sell them to other people. We make parts for things that we sell to other people, and then so it's like, I can't imagine any reason why that supply chain wouldn't come back into smooth performance at some point.
Well, I think the point that he's making is that it's not just COVID, but we're in the midst of ecological collapse and climatic collapse and the collapse of the planet's life supporting systems. And sure, I think at the present moment, the economy is basically working, and with competition and all that, and access to resources and fuel and shipping and all that. So from that perspective, the perspective you're raising, Jonathan, it is temporary. But I think what he's kind of doing is extrapolating forward and saying, hey, we are in the midst of planetary collapse, civilizational collapse. I mean, look, if we can't grow our food, that's surplus food is the whole basis for an industrial economy. And if we can't produce enough food or transport that food to where it's needed, then whole economies, civilizations, everything, society will collapse. I think that's kind of the point he's making. So he's sort of extrapolating forward a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's things to worry about, but we're, well, here's another way to look at it too. The interruption in the supply chains is slowing down the consumption of garbage, essentially. All cars end up becoming mostly garbage because we don't build them in a way that is really super efficient at recycling. So if we, instead of building 50 million cars in a year, we only build 40 million, we've actually saved 10 million cars from the landfill. So the fact that the supply chain is interrupted is not necessarily a bad thing for lowering the heat signature of the planet. In other words, it's not something necessarily to lament. It could be actually an indication of increasing awareness about how having less is better and less is the new more. Things were too easy to get before. People built up insane surpluses of things because they were so cheap and easily accessible. Like myself with my prototyping, it didn't mean anything to me to go to my computer and order up another 200 or 300 PVC pipe adapters, right angles, T-shaped ones with 5 connectors, couplers. I would just over order. I was like, I'm going to build a new design and I think I'm going to need these. I would just go and order it and a giant box would arrive 3 days later and it would have all this marvelous plastic in it. And then I would build that prototype and then I would be like, well, you know what? This prototype isn't really optimized. So I'm moving on. So now I've probably got one of the largest collection of PVC fittings of any person in California, because what was I going to do with them? I can't ship them back. They were so cheap. They were like $2 a piece. So, over ordering, over inventorying. Whereas if they were $10 a piece, I would have gotten my pencil out and gone, I just need 3 of these. I don't need 4. I need 3 of these, rather than just ordering willy-nilly. So it's possible that there's a benefit to the supply chain being interrupted, rather than being an indicator of the end of the world. It might be an indicator of a healing. A person who overeats suddenly finds food a bit more scarce. All of a sudden they become more healthy.
Yeah. Your point is well taken, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Thank you. James has his hand up. Go for it, James.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, no doubt about it. If you're looking at it from the point of view that we're still in control of things, then systems will bounce back. That's no doubt about it. But again, like Jamin said, when you're looking forward and you're talking about the breakdown, as Umair was saying, in this, tipping points, we don't have to wait till 4 degrees to have cascading tipping points at all. They're already beginning and started already. And there's, at the moment, there's serious concern about the AMOC now as well. So the point is that if we can't grow food, the society breaks down anyway. And if society breaks down, all systems and transport and everything else breaks down along with it. So, that is where we're heading eventually. You know what I mean? If we don't get our acts together. But yeah, there is also the benefits of systems breaking down as well, because if you look at Paul Beckwith's video there now on YouTube, he's just talking about the cascading tipping effects that are starting to take place. And, he talks about that we're going to have to go back to a community-based way of living, to localized living with localized products, because that is the way it's going to go eventually. Or has to go anyway. If we want to keep surviving, we're going to have to be much more frugal. Passing the bit up.
Very good. Good stuff, you guys. Marco, you're on mute. I don't know if you're trying. Oh, go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think the overall point that needs to be made is, yeah, systems do recover. They tend to recover. If they're not too badly destroyed, they recover. And I think right now, what we're trying to do is have our human systems recover. If the planet, continues to overheat because we keep doing the wrong things, the planet will recover, but will recover without humans. That's where we're at. Worrying about, our only our supply lines, self-centered. Yes, I can't buy things on Amazon as cheaply, but I can still buy them and they'll still come. And we're missing the point that it's not about us. And I think that's a bigger point that Umair is trying to make, is that we're still think too much about only ourselves. And with that, I'm complete. Yeah.
All right, good stuff, you guys. I will keep on reading and keep on jumping in whenever you feel like it. So thanks, everyone. So just to overlap a couple of sentences here. At 3 degrees centigrade, the water turns to poison and the soil to dust. You don't want to know what happens at 4, which is that it automatically hits 5 degrees centigrade thanks to self-reinforcing feedback. It's enough to know that most life as we know it can't survive. And so our civilization's systems collapse as they've already begun collapsing. Air, water, food, medicine, all these things are becoming harder and harder to get. Tried to buy furniture or electronics recently? Not easy, is it? But this is just the beginning. Collapse of an incredible kind, history's worst, happens in mere decades on the course we're on. By the end of the century, that's one human lifetime from now, the planet is unlivable for most life as we know it. Do we want to be that being? The walking apes who destroyed the planet? The ones who were as destructive as the giant meteor which wiped out the dinosaurs? In geological time, we're the same thing. A meteor happens overnight. We've been around for 300,000 years. Big deal, same difference. The Earth will survive us, but we will have been a stain, a black memory, a fatal mistake of evolution. We need to rethink our relationship with nature, and it needs to happen now. Let me give you another example. Ever since I got snowy, I find it difficult to eat meat. I'm not a saint, and I was a rank ignoramus before. Now, I see a little creature just like Snowy, full of character, emotion, personality, life, when I eat meat. I still hunger for it on some physical level, but morally, emotionally, mentally, I'm repulsed by this act of taking a life needlessly. I feel a terrible sense of shame and guilt. Who's innocent? If we think about it, the only forms of life on planet Earth which are pure in the sense that they are genuinely nonviolent are plants and some forms of bacteria. Plants take in sunlight, something inert. Some bacteria can feed on minerals. These are the only two beings on planet Earth who do not need to consume living things in order to survive. The rest of us, we're trapped in a kind of living nightmare. We have to kill in order to survive, to live. We have to literally take life in order to have it. We have to eat something consume it in the most naked way in order to breathe. This is a horrific place to be if you think about it. It's no wonder that it's easier for us to pretend that we're not doing terrible violence as we walk the well-lit aisles of some cheery grocery store. And yet that cheery grocery store is full of false happiness precisely because it is the front for a vast machinery of death. How many animals does it take to feed us? Trillions. This relationship too has to change. We have to consume far, far less if we want to go on surviving as a civilization. That change probably has to happen, probably has to begin with what we literally eat. The way that we eat too is symbolic of how we consume in general. Mindlessly, thoughtlessly, selfishly, stupidly. The ancients had a far, far more mature relationship with nature than we do. They consumed what they needed and drew the line there. They used all of what they took in gratitude. They had a profound sense of justice towards nature. Why? Because they understood they were at nature's mercy. We don't. We think we're above nature. Still think that way though? Or has that conviction been shaken? I need to pause for a quick second. Okay, after a brief pause, just with overlapping here a little bit, the ancients had a far, far more mature relationship with nature than we do. They consumed what they needed and drew the line there. They used all of what they took in gratitude. They had a profound sense of justice towards nature. Why? Because they understood they were at nature's mercy. We don't. We think we're above nature. Still think that way though, or has that conviction been shaken by the last year or so of mega fire and mega flood? Nature's trying to wipe us out. Wouldn't you if you were her? I would. We're the worst thing to happen to the rest of life on this planet. Why do we think we're above nature, so far above it that we can take as much as we want, exploit it, abuse it, kill it off? This mistake goes back, way back, to the Enlightenment or monotheistic religion, or both, take your pick. I have religious cousins, very religious ones. Their entire lives are lived to please a deity, not to coexist with anyone or anything else. When they see Snowy, they have a strange reaction. They think he's dirty and unclean, not just physically, but existentially. They don't even care that this is offensive to me because, well, I adore the little guy. For them, it's salvation that matters. Why do they think Snowy's existentially unclean? Because their monotheistic religion teaches them, as all of them do, that animals don't have souls. So where do animals go in this scheme of things? Well, either to hell or nowhere, because they never existed at all. It's patently ridiculous to tell me that my best friend doesn't exist, that he doesn't have a soul. Of course he exists. He's sitting right next to me. Of course he has a soul. It's a bigger soul than most people I know, full of laughter and grace and courage. Think of how brave the little guy has to be to live with us. He's 10 inches tall. Soul? I don't know anyone braver or more loving than our dogs, my friends. And yet they tell me that the animals are going to hell. Are you kidding me? How can you believe that? I'm sorry if you're religious, but I have to draw a line somewhere. An ideology which says all the countless trillions of creatures on this planet except you are not really worthy is basically fascism. I'm sorry, and there I finally said it. Monotheistic religion began this strange way of thinking. The ancients didn't think this way. For them, not only did animals have souls, but all of nature did. Greeks were just of many, I guess, one of many ancient cultures to deify nature. The Egyptians did too. Most ancient cultures had such an intimate relationship with nature that becoming an animal in a vision with the help of a hallucinogen was considered something divine, something elevated, not something subhuman and degraded like we do. That's telling of how broken our relationship with nature really is. The Enlightenment continued the mistake of monotheistic religion and made of subjugating nature, of degrading it. The Enlightenment continued the mistake monotheistic religion had made of subjugating nature, of degrading it. The Enlightenment picked up where monotheistic religion had left off. Animals couldn't reason and employ logic, and therefore they were inferior. Enlightenment thinkers love to build hierarchies, and in them, human beings, white ones, because they just invented the idea of race, were on top, the most rational of all. Below them came other races, yellow, red, black, and so on. But there are no yellow or red people, for Pete's sake. Enlightenment thinkers at this point were literally making things up. What a stupid, stupid tragedy that we still believe them. But their hierarchies didn't stop there. Below the inferior races came the animals, in descending order of reason too. And since then, that's the way we've come to see the world. The more rational a being is, the more they deserve dominion, power, and control. Only now, that entire worldview is being revealed as a lie, in a kind of grand, morbid, ironic joke. What was rationality to Enlightenment thinkers? It was self-advantage, basically, being able to amass and acquire and outwit. It wasn't just putting cause to effect, but the idea that all that could be employed in profit. Hence, capitalism was the great outcome of Enlightenment thinking. But if rationality is the maximization of one's own advantage, then the ugly endgame is before us now. What kind of world does that form of rationality lead to? A world where Bezos or Zuck could vaccinate the entire planet, but don't. A world where billionaires own the entire American working and middle class, keeping them in perpetual debt. A world where the human race goes on consuming as much as it can, as fast as it can, even if it destroys its own civilization. Rationality of this form, consumption maximization, turns out to be the most irrational thing of all. Short-sighted, narrow-minded, foolish. The ancients knew it. They weren't dumb. They just weren't interested in this way of thinking. They saw where it would lead, which is to human beings acting like locusts, like viruses, like dishonorable and mindless things. Even locusts and viruses have limits to their appetites. Do we? The ancients did not want to go down this road. They saw where it would lead. Nearly every ancient contains a stark prohibition against rationality as selfishness and consumption maximization, as materialism and individualism. Most have complex norms against this mindset. Just think of complex forms of egalitarianism like gift economies or moral codes like Ubuntu. We are at the end of this way of thinking, and that's a good thing because the price has been steep. Regarding nature as something inferior, stupid, worthless, meant to be consumed, has had a terrible price for us too. We've grown alienated from nature, our own nature. What are we? Above all, we're social beings. We're not the lone wolf apex predators that American pseudoscience makes us out to be. We can try to be that, which is what American culture wants everyone to be, but we're not happy that way. We're not happy, fulfilled, or ennobled as idiots who carry guns to Starbucks and consume everything in sight with abandon. We just end up like Americans, lonely, dumb, angry, and self-destructive. We need to become very different kinds of people now, full of gratitude and love and respect for all of life, all of it, from the tiniest creature to the greatest. Rationality can't be the measure of a creature because it's only made fools of us. It's only led us to self-destruction and ruin. The idea that a person, a nation, or a species should only be in it for themselves, their own gain, profit, advantage. We need to rethink our relationship with nature from that perspective. It needs to become one of investment, not consumption, which means giving back, nurturing, nourishing, protecting, guiding, coexisting, not abusing, violating, and dominating. Can we be that thing, that being? I don't know. Nobody knows. The ancients and the primitives wanted to be those beings, but modern societies came along and killed them off with efficiency, with productivity, by instilling this insatiable appetite for mindless consumption, TikTok style. Maybe in the end, that's what we are destined to be by our primate brains. This century tests all that, who we really are, can be, want to be in this world, the truth and the essence of us. So far, though, I have to wonder, are we even trying to be any different from the violent, stupid, selfish, self-destructive walking apes, capitalism and patriarchy and empire? All those old systems of domination, violence, and violation want us to be. I'm going to repeat that last question. So far, though, I have to wonder, are we even trying to be any different from all that? Are we even trying to be any different? And that's the end of the article.
It's a great reading. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Jamin. Yeah, that's a big question, isn't it? Are we even trying? I don't think enough of us are. I don't even think most of us are. And that's our problem right now.
Our problem is most of us aren't aware that they're supposed to be trying. So, without being told the truth and without being in the picture, you're not really capable of dealing with the full, you can't deal with the full deck if you haven't got the full deck. So people need to know it's not as if we're incapable of dealing with, the truth, basically, because that's what our leaders kind of think and have taught for. And apart from our leaders thinking that we're not capable of handling the truth, that people would panic or whatever it is, there was also the deception that was going on for the last number of decades then by the oil companies and everything else to hide the truth from people. So it's it's a combination of control and manipulation and lies. But people still need to know the truth because they're not going to act or do the right things. Yeah, some people might panic or whatever. Some people aren't capable of handling the actual truth of what's happening, especially if it's all thrown at them at one time. But if you think about it, the powers that be are leaving that to be the case, because if the situation with the climate gets out of control and the power, as we were saying earlier, with systems falling apart, then when people know the truth, if people learn of the truth of it that way, there'll be complete and utter pandemonium. But if people were prepared in advance and prepare in advance for what is possibly coming down the line, then people would learn to work together and to do that for the common good. I think anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, James. It's part that they, it would be it's an overwhelm to try and understand this all at once. And not just because it's too much, but because we've got at least 2 or 3 generations of people educated in a way that they don't think about the big things. They only think about their immediate needs because that makes the consumers, that makes, that whole paradigm of, poor and rich. The rich get richer, the poor stay poor to make the rich richer. And this system of keeping everybody undereducated is really backfiring now that we need people to dig in and do the right thing, because they don't know what the right thing is because they haven't had to think about these things in their lifetimes.
Well, the way I see it is we're all trapped in this miserable hamster wheel, right, of endless competition and hoarding, this all-day monopoly game, as Daniel Schmachtenberger calls it. And when you're trapped in the game, and you're struggling for survival, or you're struggling to prop up your ego so that you can, be whoever you're convinced that you need to be socially, economically, whatever. It's a challenge to break away from the game, right? The all-day monopoly game, and say, hey, whoa, can we all stop and redesign the game? Can we come up with a new game, right? We're talking about whole system transformation here, because the reality is, anywhere you go in the world, other than a few pockets of indigenous societies that are quite isolated and haven't been overrun yet because they're either too far north or too far into the Amazon jungle or whatever, and those are shrinking. Those pockets are shrinking. So basically, aside from those tiny pockets, wherever you are in the world, if you want to eat, you need money. Okay, and if you want money, you got to play the game of money, right? And so to say, hey, whoa, let's stop and redesign the game, unless you've got some surplus socked away, or constant money coming in from some external source, and fortunately enough of us do, you're kind of trapped, right? And it's really hard to get off the hamster wheel, because to jump off the hamster wheel, you might, crash against the cage, proverbially, the walls of the cage, and die. And so here's how I see it. It's not binary. It's not either or. It's not like, well, either you're playing the game or you're not. No, you can play the game, and you can also participate in the redesign, the holistic redesign, the whole system transformation of life on Earth, which is what we're engaged in here. And we just need a lot more people playing this game and working on the strategy, the pathways, the vectors of whole system transformation. And at our last Dear Umair session 3 days ago on Friday, September 10th, we had a very long and deep conversation about that. A couple of us weren't here for that. And so I'm going to repeat what I proposed then as an actual mechanistic pathway for us to get there from here, right? And here it is. Okay. I said, imagine hypothetically that 8,000 of us agreed to come together and play this game of holistic redesign of human life on Earth, which will, of course, make all the difference between, do we continue to enslave and destroy the planet as humanity, or do we become a caretaker species? So just hypothetically, imagine 8,000 of us agree to come together. And I also proposed, I won't repeat all the steps, but I proposed an algorithmic way in which we could systematically subdivide those 8,000 until we get to, on the order of 1,000 rooms, Zoom rooms, 1,000 conversations, whether Zoom rooms or breakout rooms, those are technical details, but 1,000 conversations going in parallel with, on average, 8 people each, right? Those 1,000 rooms, those 1,000 conversations, if they are recorded, which we have the technology to do, transcribed in real time, which we have the technology to do, indexed, those transcripts indexed in real time, which we have the technology to do, and therefore made searchable, right? Then each of those 1,000 conversations would have programmatic access to all the other 1,000, right? They can search, find out what they're doing, what they're talking about, and we could even have algorithm, code written up quite quickly, actually, to give us tools to say, okay, of all the other 1,000 conversations that are happening, which ones are talking about what we're talking about here, which are talking about the same thing, which have come to similar conclusions, which have come to opposite conclusions, and then have mechanisms of bringing these different conversations together to form synthesis, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, etc. So we could have all these mechanisms for basically those 1,000 rooms. Again, I really encourage you to, if you haven't seen it, watch that last recording from September 10th. It was awesome. Take my word for it. It was freaking awesome. And because we mapped out a way that we could actually do this. Now, how do we get, first of all, what percentage of humanity is 8,000 people? Is it 1%? Is it 1/1000th? No, it is 1/1,000,000th. If 1 in a million people came together to play this game of collective intelligence, imagine what would happen, right? If it's properly designed, and we've got a lot of tools to properly design this. We've got World Cafe, we've got Sociocracy, we've got, what's that method? Open space. We've got open space methods. We've got all these different methods and algorithms and tools and processes and systems and cultures that we can put to use. We could, right, if properly designed, and perhaps our first step would be to design this game, right, of collective intelligence. We could provide a mechanistic way for the best ideas to bubble to the top and for people to converge on those ideas that they most want to support, right? So it could be a very dynamic game, a very dynamic system. And then those best ideas that bubble to the top could then become the starting point for the next weeks. Imagine we do this on a weekly basis for, I don't know, 4 hours. Once a week for 4 hours, 1 in a million people get together to play the game of redesigning humanity as a collective intelligence, as a cooperative endeavor, with some kind of end game to be determined, to be designed, other than endless hoarding of dead carcasses of animals, trees, plants, land, soil. What is cement but the dead carcass of soil, right? What is concrete but the dead carcass of soil? And on and on and on. Some new game. Okay, now, so imagine week 1, we do it, 8,000 people show up. Again, it's recorded, transcribed, indexed, made searchable, broadcast even. And those 8,000 people would come away with just an absolutely life-changing experience. And they say, this is the coolest thing on earth. Not only am I showing up next week, but I'm going to bring a few friends. And so through publication of all this, just thinking very simplistically, 8,000 1 week, within a month, we're probably up to 80,000. A month later, 800,000, because you have to consider the context. The context is the world is burning and exponentially overheating, right? We need to come up with something. We need to come up with something relatively quickly, or we're going to continue to go down. I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to die, and I don't want life on Earth to be extinguished, which is kind of what's on the table right now with exponential planetary overheating, combined with 440 active nuclear power plants and who knows how many warheads. I mean, if we let the whole thing go up as one big, funeral pyre, those 440 nuclear power plants go Fukushima, and we could release enough ionizing radiation to fry the atmosphere and turn this into a Mars or Venus incapable of supporting any kind of life. Now, my challenge to Umair and to all of us, my very loving, benevolent, compassionate challenge is that Umair, you really take in this possibility and then put the word out, because your readership constitutes the best sampling of humanity that I know of, that's measured in the tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, from which we can draw 8,000 seed crystals to play this game. All right, the game of redesigning life on Earth. Let's call it for what it is, right? It's not just about cooling the planet. It's not just about, any one slice or another of the hyperobject. It's about the whole of the hyperobject, which again, we discussed on September 10th. Now, I kind of made a big blurt there because I need to go. So we're going to pause recording for a second and then figure out internally what we do from here, to be continued. Okay, I've got to go do some family stuff. We're going to resuming recording now, and God bless you. You all continue. This is a great conversation. Sorry I had to hit and run, and we'll see you guys. So recording continues. Dear Umair continues. Let's make it count. Thanks, everyone. See you soon. God bless.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Tomorrow.
Wow, sounds like I missed a really awesome day there Friday.
Me too.
I have to get back to that. Yeah, I apologize, Jonathan. I owe you a return phone call. I've been really behind on looking at my voicemails and texts and stuff here.
Oh, no problem.
Been having
This is our catch up now.
Yeah, it's been a couple of tough weeks for me, so I'm trying to bounce back here.
Yeah. Was there an actual fire in the local neighborhood?
No, just in my nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, that's I like that idea of the 8,000 people. It really, that's where everything starts, with a smaller group of people that are passionate and stay passionate long enough until things change. And we can take the example of a virus like COVID, started out really small in wherever it started. I don't want to get into that, but it's a virus, a microscopic thing that started in one spot in the world and covered the world in less than a few months, and changed everything. So people, as individuals, we can be that same kind of growth can happen with us, just in a positive way rather than a negative way. And I know it's hard for people to hear, but there have been positive outcomes because of COVID. The fact that so many people turned to Zoom to communicate and then found out that, we can be here, me in Michigan, Alan in Scotland, James in Cork, Ireland, Jonathan in San Francisco, right? And work together and see, not only our problems in our immediate neighborhoods and states or countries, or however you want to break it down, we can see what's happening firsthand from someone across the country, across the globe. And that's a powerful tool we have now to work for, the good of the planet, and not just what satisfies our primal urges.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, even the COVID was rationalized, they still made decisions, as Umair said, like, why was the vaccine withheld from the developing countries and nations? You know what I mean? Because there's profit in it. Yes, it was going to spread around the world, and even they knew that, but it's now become something we have to live with and something we'll have to continue to get vaccines for. So it's all become profit. It was rationalized back into profit as usual, even
Right.
at the expense of people's lives, which it's always been anyway. Like, it's just that it's in our faces now and people can't see it for what it is. So, you know, at the end of the day, we have no other choice but to come together, whether there's 8,000 of us, 8 million of us, 80 of us, or 8 of us. At least someone come together anyway and make some effort to the contrary, because that's what it takes. It's going to take. There's plenty of people out there that just not aware that we can connect, and with the Trope network now coming up and being launched, you know, that is something that's going to be a helpful tool to connect all change makers. Basically, it's the missing link, as far as I'm concerned, in you know, getting the change makers together instead of having them separate, and as they've been kept separate as well, mostly, like, you know what I mean, intentionally as well as well, unintentionally, because we don't have the tool, as I said, but we have it now with Trove, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, it's well, it's a
Yes.
blessing in disguise. It's a blessing in disguise if we use it, if we use it and get it out there soon, and well, it will be. So,
Right. Yeah, no, we're in a window of opportunity to make things better, to, you know, salvage out of the disaster. And as far as, you know, the vaccines being withheld from developing countries is one, it was about money, and, you know, it served two purposes for people that have that insane way of thinking where profit is more important than people, but it also, you know, allowed more people to die in those countries, you know, for people who talked about depopulation like Bill Gates. You have to wonder, you know, was he only motivated by you know, profit, or was the idea that withholding the, you know, the virus or controlling the production so that it takes longer to get to third world countries was also you know, an effort towards that depopulation that he thinks is so important.
well, we'll never know the true workings of a man's mind, but you can only rationalize to the answer to that one. But I would say it's a close between one or the other, because the fact is, it's, if you think about it, when the virus made its presence, and when it became world known as a pandemic, well, then the you know, the order that went out basically was that we've got to get, you know, a vaccine for this, and everybody on the planet needs to be vaccinated. And that's obviously what you do when you get a virus. We go to the doctor every day of the week, and most people do anyway, go to the doctor at some stage with a virus, and they take antibiotics for it. But regardless, point is, the sense is to get rid of it, to eradicate it, to come up with a vaccine to and everybody, because it started with one person. Therefore, everybody will have to be vaccinated for the vaccine to be effective. So to withhold that for whatever reason we can speculate, it's nothing other than, you know, oxymoron. You know what I mean? It's an oxymoron choice, like, to not give it to everybody freely, unless there's some motivation behind it at the expense of people's lives, because that motivation had to be worth more than the lives of the people that were lost because of COVID, because vaccines were held from them. So there's no other way of thinking about it. There's no other way of thinking about it other than that there's something nefarious going on.
ultimately, you're right. It doesn't matter the reasoning for any one person or any group of people to withhold. The result is the same. People die.
Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm vaccinated. I've had my double Pfizer jab because I know that, I know the science behind it, and I know what it's a virus, and I have underlying illnesses and everything else, but I know the ins and outs of the science and the peer-reviewed literature, and that's what I took based my decision on when I decided to go for the vaccine. But also, prior to making my decision, was just shortly before it, was the decision by Bill Gates and the CDC not to, and the Biden administration not to share the patents with India and developing countries. That sealed the deal for me. That made me decide to go and take the vaccine, because the way I saw it was, you have a point there with the depopulation thing that Bill Gates has spoke about, and I thought to myself, why is he even involved in this equation here? I'm making choices, and there's something not right there anyway with that. There's certainly nothing right with the decision anyway to withhold the vaccine patents from India and other developing countries. That's just sheer wrong at the end of the day. So you would question it. And
Well, Gates,
when I questioned it, the answer that came to me was, they don't want to get rid of their workforce. As Jonathan said earlier, the system will always bounce back, and they want to keep it going. They want the money machine working. So they're not going to get rid of their workforce. So if there was a depopulation agenda, then the best way to do is withhold the vaccine from them, so to speak. So that was all the more reason that made me decide I'll take it.
yeah, well, he made Gates in particular made the claim that he was doing it for quality control purposes, that these countries weren't capable of producing it in a proper manner, that they would make an inferior product because they just don't have the technology. They're not as developed as we are, and it's best if it stayed in our control to be able to make it. So
yeah, that stands up there, right? Yeah. I mean, literally.
I mean, I don't believe that, but at least it's a logical, an attempt to make it seem reasonable.
Anyway, the point is that getting back to the Umair's article, and the point is that it's rationality is behind those decisions, and the powers that be make the decisions for the people. So they're supposed to be working for us. At the end of the day, the world's going down the shitter as far as I'm concerned. So they're obviously not doing a good job. Therefore, there is no other choice but for the people to try and put their own heads together and come up with different ways of thinking. And by we elected our leaders into government, we can we can vote them out in the next turn around if we have a better plan, I suppose. So point is, whatever the plan is, I don't know, but how we come up with it is only if we get together. Is the only way. Simple and plain.
Absolutely correct. The paradigm just needs to shift just enough where people realize that we do have individual agency, and we do have the ability to come together and make decisions and make ourselves heard. We just have to organize a little bit and on a regular basis, and we either will wake up enough people to shift the politics and shift who's in power to people that are intelligent about um, working with all of life on Earth to, share the resources in a way that is sustainable. Seems simple enough, right? If we manage these things in a certain way, life becomes sustainable as opposed to, or life as we understand it now, our civilization is either going to survive or not. Our species is either going to survive or not based on what we do in the next few months. And we still have time to survive that, just not as much time as the general public keeps being led to believe. I mean, even when the news admits this is a dire circumstance we're in, we need to, do these things, and they will even say the right things, decarbonize, but all those things, that we needed to do 60 years ago are too late. We need, some form of cooling the planet quickly, and then still we need to do the decarbonization and, rewild areas and, change our habits to sustainable ones. Educate everybody, the general public, on what it means to be sustainable. They're getting a firsthand education on what it is to be unsustainable. But right now, many people just are not educated enough to, understand. And it's not complicated, but to understand, how we're failing to be sustainable, and how and how soon that's going to happen. And I mean, we're unsustainable now, but I mean, to the point where we're not going to exist, that we're, this global warming, when the latest science says in the summer of 2022, that's, next year, that's 12 months away, we will no longer have polar sea ice survive the summer. Will be so warm. And when the polar sea ice is gone, we lose whatever cooling effect it has, but we also lose the reflectivity that ice gives us to reflect sunlight back into space before it warms the planet further. Any sunlight we can, reflect back into space doesn't warm the planet. And contrary to what some people believe, the light passing through the atmosphere is not warming the atmosphere. The planet, the warming happens when the light is absorbed and creates heat that needs to be reflected back in order to cool. And since the light has, the visible light has turned to warmth on some object, a rock, the soil, the ocean, it's now infrared heat, that infrared light heat that reflects back, which is trapped by the greenhouse gases. So there's several projects out there that have a way to cool the planet quickly if they're implemented in enough time. We don't become extinct, and that time frame is not 50 years from now, it's not 40 years from now, it's not 10 years from now, it's now. It has to happen now. In the next year, I don't even think, we can go 2 years before starting implementation of some kind of solar radiation management without losing, most such a significant portion of life on Earth that we just won't survive. So the bright spot there is there's options out there. Several of them, and we need people to spread the word and encourage others to at least see the options and make up their own minds. We need some more. We need some more people, the type of people that read Umair's articles. Those are, people that obviously care about this issue and wouldn't be reading. Your readership you wouldn't have a big readership if they didn't understand the consequences. And if we can direct some of your readership here to show up at our meetings, if you would come to our meetings, Umair, it could mean the difference. This could be that start of a viral campaign, a viral campaign for good, something that will get us on track and change the fate of humanity from being the sixth mass extinction, or we develop into the caretaker species that values all life and turns this planet into the paradise it could be. Oh, and with that, I'm complete for the moment.
Well, I know that for anybody that might be looking at the video here now and they're listening to us, and they're probably, to some, because a lot of people aren't in the know, they're probably thinking, who are these guys here? Like, but I mean, this is the point, that a lot of people aren't in the know because the majority of the truth is being kept from us, from mainstream media, so to speak. And if you really want to know the truth, you have to go delving in and look for it specifically, I suppose. But I mean, the truth is blatant now, and it's becoming more blatant in people's faces anywhere around the world with the situation that's happening. Even just this year alone, like, was a wake-up call for the majority of people to know that something's not right now. Like. So it doesn't take that much more of convincing, I think. And I don't think we have, like, the winter has a lot to tell as well. And, we'll see, God forbid, I don't wish any disaster or anything bad on anyone, but unfortunately, this is what's going to be coming down the line, and people's eyes are soon going to open up anyway. So I only have, to wish that when people realize that, things could go really bad, that they go to the good side of it and work together rather than reverting to the same attitude that most people have now, which is hoard and look after yourself. You know what I mean? That kind of a situation. So anyway, just so that people don't realize that, that we're just talking crap here, I suppose, is what I'm saying. Like, I'd just like to share a small clip from a meeting that was held in the UN. It was by John Doyle, who's an Irishman himself, and he was one of the head of the United Nations Foresight Group, or EU, sorry, the European Union's Foresight Group. And he was giving a talk to some of the board there as to the situation we're facing. And this, might I add, this video is 2 years old or so. But anyway, I'll just play a little clip to give those that might be watching this video later an idea of what we're talking about. Am I a co-host there, Marco?
Hey, Marco, are you familiar with solar punk as a like a artistic genre?
You're muted, Marco. Your lips are moving, but there's no sound.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I didn't realize. Okay, to answer your question, Jonathan, I'm not aware of it. And James, we did see your screen share start, but we didn't hear any audio.
Oh, no, I just stopped it for a sec just to give you a chance to answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with it, Jonathan.
Does anybody know the logic behind? I mean, I've heard a few stories about places, different states or different countries mandating the vaccine or having vaccine passports and stuff. If people who've got the vaccine, if it actually works, I mean, how are the unvaccinated a threat to them or anyone but themselves? Does anyone understand that?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure I understood that. Can you run that by me one more time?
The vaccination mandates forcing people who've not got the vaccination to take it, so that they can mix with people who've got the vaccine. Is it? And what is the threat that they hold to someone who's vaccinated? I mean, I'm assuming that the vaccination works, but all the indications are that it doesn't work, because if you don't have the vaccination, you're still a threat to people who are vaccinated. I don't understand the logic.
Right, yeah, there is like a logic gap there. If why should, I'm not taking either side here, just the logic is, if you're vaccinated, then you're safe. What does it matter if there's unvaccinated people? Then that's their problem. They may get sick and die, but vaccination is the answer. Then there should be no need for any kind of mandate. The people that are vaccinated will then, survive, and the people who aren't won't. And how does that harm the vaccinated people? You're correct there. There's a flaw in the logic of mandating vaccination.
Well, I'm not for mandating anything either. Like that's a different situation. But the point and that I get from behind it is that if you're vaccinated, like depends on your vaccine that you take. No, like, but if it's, we say I took the Pfizer, so I'm going to go on that one. So I get about 94% efficacy from the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, after about a month after having it, and it stays about 94%. Now, if I ended up contracting the virus, then I'd only have supposedly, hopefully, have only mild symptoms of it and ride it out. And after riding it out, then I would also have the antibodies of the virus as well, which means then I'd be totally immune. But that's to that original strain, and it also is very much has strong efficacy against serious disease and death with the Delta variant. But you can still, even though you have the vaccine, you could still pick up the Delta variant from somebody that's near in your vicinity. And even though it may not even register you, which you might only be asymptomatic or not, a mild effect of it, flu symptoms or something like that. The majority of people that have the vaccine are not being hospitalized or dying, obviously, but they do become infectious with it, with the new Delta strain, so they can pass it on then as well within their community. You know what I'm saying? But the point is that it is the unvaccinated now that are majority of the unvaccinated, up into the 90-odd%, like that, or percentile, that are dying and getting the sickest. And there's a lot of young people now as well. And I think you should look at the American CDC information. You'll see that alone. So at the end of the day, we're going to be living with the virus now. I mean, the idea of lockdown and everything is being eased off as well, because they know that they're not going to be able to convince everybody to take the vaccine. Therefore, the virus is going to continue spreading and mutating. So we're going to be left with COVID now as a new form of seasonal flu on top of the ordinary strain of seasonal flu, which some people think that nobody's died of since. But if you look up death statistics, there's still the usual amount of people that die from normal flu down on the records as dying of normal flu, but there's over 20 million dead of COVID. So, you know, do the math. Like it's probably just safer to get it fucking done. And I don't understand. It's been politicized, and that's as simple as that. But anyway, getting back to it. Do you want me to do that shit screen share?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a quick example of what we're talking about, really, for anybody that will be looking at the recording. Again, now this is John Doyle speaking from the EU Foresight Group, and he's giving a talk about what they're facing, or what we're all facing with the climate.
Cool. This guy's great. Met a really nice man, Oppenheimer. And the unfortunate man actually made this statement. He feels terribly sorry for the poor people in the world and all of nature which might collapse, because we wealthy folks are going to be fine. Like we wealthy folks in the better off world are not part of nature. This is insanity. And this is still a deeply held belief, I suspect, most of the people around this table, certainly for those we represent. It's very, very frightening that people still have this attitude. Bottom right-hand side is a much better one. This is President Niinistö from Finland. Great character who actually had the courage at the White House to tell Trump, if we lose the Arctic sea ice, we lose the globe. So at the top of this world, we have this huge big lump of ice, and it's going to be gone within 2 or 3 years. That absorbs an incredible amount of the heat we should already be feeling. When it goes, it'll come back the next year, but only during the winter. And eventually, after about 10 years from the first what they call blue water event, which I predict will be September this year, within 10 years of that first blue water event, the loss of reflectivity and the addition of heat pouring into the ocean because of the lack of the ice will be the equivalent of putting into the Earth climate system the same amount of heat as all the greenhouse gases that human beings have ever emitted since we crawled out of the last ice age. My own personal favourite is the picture of the déjeuner. I love that déjeuner picture because I took it. I was on one of the very first Eurostars, the Eurostars, one that goes to London, whatever, the London-Brussels one. I was on one of the very first ones back in 95, 96 when it opened. I remember getting off and seeing 10 gazillion dead insects plastered off the front of this train. This is the front of the train that I got off in Brussels, Midi, having come back from London last July. So we had ploughed through the southern English countryside, we had ploughed up through the north of France, we had crashed through Belgium, we arrived in the Gare de Midi, and there was one dead fly on the windscreen. One. Insect populations have crashed by 80% in Europe in the last 20 years. We don't survive without insects. And my favourite story is, everybody I know sort of says, well, I think it's because the new aerodynamic design means the flies don't hit the window screen so often. Believe the fantasies if you like. And now I want to do 2 quick slides to challenge you to think about what you're talking about when you say, okay, we need to eliminate fossil fuels. I'm seriously out for eliminating fossil fuels. And there's no way that changes in 10 years. The only option we have for getting out of this mess is stopping doing stuff, not doing clever stuff that we pretend to ourselves are green. this is a little test to make sure everyone's been listening. The first bullet point is lovely. You'll all have heard this, but you think you heard it 3 months ago from the IPCC when they said we have 12 years, and John's just updated it to 10 years because he's exaggerating. Governments have a 10-year window of opportunity to solve the greenhouse effect before it goes beyond human control. Well, it was the UN who said that. But when did they say it? They said it 30 years ago. We've missed the window. We're living on borrowed time. The patient is in resuscitation. We just don't know yet. Go down to the second last bullet. The specific web of life to which we belong will collapse totally within 10 to 20 years. It is already collapsing all around you. It's collapsing inside you. It's collapsing in your countries. It's collapsing here. Unless. If there's no unless, most of you are going to be here at the end. That's how quickly it'll happen. What happens when a kid stops growing? Can anyone imagine a teenager who keeps growing? Can you imagine? It can essentially be summed up as follows. I have a number of friends who spent a lot of time working on this definition. Just so you have this in your back pocket the next time you meet some techno idiot who tells you he has the solution to everything. The second law of thermodynamics essentially says you cannot build a machine to clean up the mess you made making the machine. But the person who acts does not. There exists no individual. It is only a conventional name given to a set of elements. What is this humanity we're trying to save? Is this worth saving? Is the way we live at the moment worth saving? We need to do some deep thinking around this. Wisdom from the Western world is, of course, very rare. And if you do happen to come across it, it tends to be poets and lunatics. John Keats, the guy I quite like, in a poem which is called When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be. This is it's one of very few little gems you can pick from the West. Then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone and think, to love and fame, to nothingness to sink. We need to reconnect with our place in this universe. We need to reconnect in humility with the wisdom of the ages. Or we're out of here. Thank you.
Sorry, we lost that. Oh, we lost Jonathan.
Yeah. Can you put a link for that in the chat, please?
I will, yeah. But that's just so that anyone looking at the recording gets an idea what we're doing here and what we're trying to do here. And for Umair as well to maybe have a look. You know, there are some serious problems coming our way, and majority of the humans on the planet aren't even aware of it. Yes, a lot of people are waking up, but they're waking up only gradually because they're being fed the truth only gradually. So, you know, we need to come together and try and do something about it.
Yeah, one of the problems is, you know, even the people that are starting to wake up, and they're in these arguments about what we should be doing about the problem. If they're they admit there is a problem and this is bad, but they still think we have you know, half a century or more to do something about it. Even the people that are starting to wake up still don't have the full gravity of where we're at. And in you know, most cases, I mean, you know, I grew up on a farm. We did organic gardening, and you know, we didn't do pesticides, and we were well aware of that. You know, when I was growing up, my mother was aware, and she taught us, you know, how to compost and all those things, and it felt like we were you know, that was enough. We're doing our part, and that was enough. And the problem is, you know, one family growing an organic garden, even if you're, growing for market, to go take to the farmer's market to feed many people, does not negate another, let's keep it small, does not negate 1,000 people living around you spraying poisons. We all have to be on the same page. We all have to understand the true consequences. And that's hard to do. And you can't even blame people for not understanding it, because they've been educated to not understand things like this. They've been educated to trust, their leaders. And it's, been in my lifetime that the idea of our governments being corrupt is, yeah, that's the way it is. What are you going to do about it? Politics is corrupt. That's a fact. And that's how people see it. And that shouldn't be a fact. It shouldn't be that way. The only reason these things are that way is because we allow. And now we have to quit allowing bad behavior and, promote good behavior. The biggest pile of money does not indicate that you're a good person. In fact, it may indicate that you're a bad person, even. Not necessarily, but I know that I've had decisions in my life to make, well, I could have made, that would have, put me in a position where I would have made a lot of money, but I didn't do those things because I saw the downside, the damage that somebody else had to incur or lack, or, and I couldn't justify my having, more so that somebody else would not have essentials. It's just mind-boggling that there are people that can do that. And again, the whole idea of these conversations around Umair's articles is that he has a pretty good handle on the reality of where we're at. And the people that are reading your articles are the kind of people we need to, come, if not here, go somewhere and, get involved with a group that's working on the answers, because the answers are there and they're not that complicated. You don't need to be a super scientist to understand that if we can reflect enough light back into space right now, if we implement the projects that are there, well researched now, there are several, and we need to, bring them into a greater public view, and let people understand them. And the best ones, if we organize around them, the best ones will bubble to the top, and we'll be able to use them still in time to save civilization on this planet, our civilization, and learn to do all the methods that we need to get the whole systems on the planet back in a sustainable loop, rather than this geometrically moving in a bad direction the way they are now. So once again, when you see this, Umair, contact us, and the links will be in the below, I'm sure, once these are posted. And everyone is welcome here, where we discuss these ideas. And not only do we discuss the ideas, we discuss them with the scientists and the engineers, and that are doing the work and know how to do the work, and just need some support in order to get the job done. The answers are here. All we have to do is wake up and participate so that the next conversation you have about climate change, which is really global warming is the issue. Climate has always changed. And that makes it sound like it's something we don't have to worry about because, well, it's okay, it'll just change. It's not. We are globally warming, getting hotter and hotter to the point where everything is going to look like my background. Everything's going to look like this or worse. Definitely, it will get worse than that if we don't act, and we need to act. You know, today is September 13th, 2021, and we have months to act before there is nothing left to do except pray for a comfortable death. And that's how serious this is right now. We have months to act to prevent this everywhere. And I don't know what I don't know what more I can say. Yeah, please, James.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it's like as Umair said, like are we going to be the species, you know, to be in it for ourselves, for our own gain and profit? And it was something that he also said we need to rethink our relationship with nature, and that's what made me think of the John Doyle video actually, because he said the same thing there in that clip. Like, we seriously need to rethink our, you know, our game with nature and everything else. Like, because if you watch that full video, you'll see where he, you know, where he's coming from. But yeah, can we be that thing as well? That's what Umar was saying. Like, can we get it together? You know, I believe it's the same as anything else in this planet. Like, just like a funny meme on the you know, if it's put out there, it spreads. You know what I mean? If it's good, if the meme is good enough and it's put out there, it spreads. Well, if the truth's put out there, and the truth is the truth, and people already know something's seriously lacking and going wrong, I think, you know, it'll not only spread, but it'll lead to a response that would surprise even our own leaders, which is the opposite response they're expecting. It would be a response, what can we do about it? Not chaos, which is what will ensue if they're left in the dark. That's what I've always maintained anyway. So, you know, we are a species on the brink, and unfortunately, if we go, we're going to take all other species with us, because without us looking after all these nuclear power plants and everything else and nuclear waste that we've created, if we're not around to look after that, then good luck to everything else. The planet's just going to become a floating rock, ionized in radiation. So that's not a sweet thought for as I'm concerned, because some people say, yeah, you know, we don't deserve to live as a species. The planet will be better off without us. It will go on and it'll survive. Unfortunately not. Not because of what we've made, what we've created, what we so-called most intelligent beings on the planet have created, our own destructive power, our own destruction. And you know what I mean? We're the only species on the planet that doesn't even realize our place, that we're only part of it. Like, this is a symbiotic planet, like, and we're just part of it, but we think we're in charge of it. We own it. It's for our use and benefit. So again, I'm preaching here, no, or not preaching. I'm babbling, I suppose. But you know, there's no time like the present, as far as I'm concerned. And there's times when it gets me down a lot. Like, and as you said yourself, Marco, earlier, you know, it's getting you down a little lately. It does, of course. The truth will get you down, but we have to get the truth to get through the truth, and then find the answers together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even knowing there's solutions out there, it's easy to get uh, down about it because there's not enough action happening, to implement them. So, and the big thing, with nature and man is, if we had not taken, it's just our perspective of where we are in nature, and we've created this perspective where there's us and nature rather than understanding our part in nature. We are part of this planetary system. We are not us and the environment and nature. We need to be just recognize our place and do it in a sustainable way, a way where we're not destroying and changing everything to suit only ourselves with no regard for what it does to any other part of nature. And again, this is, each part has a place in the whole, and we've been ignoring that. So again, I think one of our best options right now is appealing to your audience, Umair, and getting like-minded people to come see the projects, the possibilities, like the Mirror Reflection Project or marine cloud brightening, just two of many solutions. Not let's not call it a solution to many. Well, it's a partial solution. It's like a Band-Aid. It's like first aid for something that needs surgery. Is what SRM, or solar radiation management, is, reflecting light back into space before it warms the planet. And it's not science fiction, it's science fact. It's doable. We just need enough people to look at it and see how simple it is. And I say simple in a very big picture approach. It's an answer that allows us to survive rather than become extinct. So who wouldn't want to at least hear about it? And that's, I think, all we're asking, because when you see what's possible, when enough people see what's possible, then we can do those things and we will survive. And who doesn't want to be a part of that? So again, the plea is, come, be informed. Don't let the mainstream media news be your guide to what needs to be done, because mainstream media news is not reality right now. It's bought and paid for opinions of people that are just out to, make the most for themselves and keep the system going that's put us in the jeopardy we're in now. So, well, once again, come see for yourselves. Links and information to attend our weekly meetings are below the video.
Yeah, and for just in case for anyone wondering if this idea of marine cloud brightening is so great, why aren't the powers that be implementing it or looking into it? Well, the reason is it's been suppressed, basically. In a sense, they have looked into types of SRM, but they declare them to be not the way to go, because it's been suppressed, as we've just all recently found out from recent news about Exxon covering up climate change and everything else, and the fossil fuel industry actively lying about it for all these years, basically. So it's been suppressed, and even the submission by Professor Salter to the COP26 this year for his SRM marine cloud brightening proposal. It was rejected without even being seen or read, on the grounds that they already have enough ideas, enough proposals. And his work wasn't the only work that was rejected. Now, at the time when we're facing the planet being looking like something behind Marco's head there, you would think that every stone should be turned in looking for an answer. Nothing should be rejected, especially without being scrutinized and put on the table. So that's my only that's one of my main reasons for being here as well and doing this, because it's been suppressed just like other technologies have been suppressed for years, and the majority of the people don't know about it. So that's what we're trying to do, is create awareness. So I would plead again with Umair to maybe mention it in one of his articles at the least. That would be most helpful. And mention maybe us guys in the Trove network, which is starting up, which will be the ultimate tool for change makers. Thanks.
Yeah. I have high hopes for the Trove network, connecting the projects and the change makers in the world to get the things done we need to continue as a species.
I would say that we're about rounded off, unless Alan, you have something to say, man, and you probably might want to text Jim and Marco to get him to stop the recording.
Yes, I'm complete for now. I think we're right there, unless you have something, Alan, to add right now. Okay. Well, then.
Alan might be asleep. It's 1 o'clock in Scotland.
Oh yeah, that's true. I'm just trying to test this.
I love your cat, Marco.
Yeah, he's not mine. He wandered in my room somehow. I don't know how he got in here.
Well, is he, what you mean he's not yours? Is he belong to one of the family, no, or he just wandered into the house?
Yeah, no, he's my sister's, or her kids, belongs to them. They, our apartments connect. So if somebody leaves a wrong door open, I get visitors.
Beautiful. I only learned from having cats myself, because we never had cats. We always had dogs in the house. My mother used to be allergic to cats. So it was only in recent years that I got a couple of cats. My daughter asked to get them. But so I'm only have learned about them now in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
One thing I learned is that they don't like to be rubbed on their bellies. That's about the only thing I think they don't like, really, unless you jump up behind them or anything like that, which I wouldn't do anything anyway.
Yeah, actually, I've known a couple that actually like their bellies rubbed and will come and ask for it, which is not very many, but there's been a couple. I'm like, yeah, you're not a dog. You don't like your belly rubbed. And you're like, yeah, yes, I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not, there are exceptions to the rule, all right, in general,
Yeah.
this, anyway. But yeah, they're fascinating creatures. So.
Yeah, they're something else. They can be as loving as dogs when they want to be, but they definitely let you know they don't need you.
Mine are the opposite. Mine are the opposite somehow, anyway, because they constantly let me know that they need me. I mean, I can't go out to this kitchen sink to put water in the kettle or rinse a cup or anything without Walt jumping up on the sink, and he insists on a hug. He literally has to get it. He hugs into me.
Yeah.
Chest, you know what I mean?
Well, there's, like I said, yeah, they all have their personalities, but cats can be very, very, oh, get off. No, don't do that. They can be very, very independent.
They can be very cat-like that now as well, yeah, like that moment.
All right, buddy, you gotta go. Let me give Jaden a quick. Don't. You're gonna push buttons. All right, you gotta go back where you belong. Where am I at here? Yeah, I'll have to look at that recording from the 10th. I can't believe that was another day I just fell asleep. And hey, Jamie, we're ready for a wrap. We've okay. Okay, that'll work. All right. Okay, cool. All right, thanks. Yep. Bye. Okay, Jamin's not home, so we can't stop the recording. So what I'm gonna do is end the meeting for all, and then we can, I'll come back like in 1 minute. That way it'll record to his computer without him stopping it.
Okay, so we'll just come back again in a minute.
Yep.
All right.